Today we uncover the shocking truth about modern UK basmati rice, a food that sat quietly on British dinner plates for generations, and it's not bread, it's not milk, it's rice. Think back to a Friday night. The curry house menu's out, or maybe you're doing it yourself, a knob of butter in the pan, a few whole green cardamom pods, a couple of cloves, a bay leaf thrown in for good measure, trying to get that same fragrant, fluffy pilau you'd get from your favourite local. That smell alone is enough to make half the country's mouth start watering. And then there's the other rice memory, the one that came in a big, slightly squashed red and white cardboard box from the Chinese takeaway. Egg fried rice. Greasy, studded with tiny fluorescent green peas, that unmistakable yellow from the egg, sometimes a bit more yellow than egg alone could really explain. Nobody questioned it. It was just what Friday night tasted like. Maybe you made it at home too. A simple homemade curry and rice. A midweek dinner that didn't need to be fancy, just filling. But for millions of people, rice hasn't just been the occasional treat, it's been part of daily meals for generations. Cheap, reliable, natural. A staple that never let you down. But now, what's actually ending up in that pan might surprise you. And for some brands, it isn't good news at all. That world feels a very long way away now. Walk down the rice aisle today and you're faced with rows of sterile, identical plastic pouches, glossy pictures of snowy mountains, and grand promises that rarely survive contact with your saucepan. Many long-time cooks have noticed something has quietly gone wrong, even with the top-tier brands that have been praised for years. The grains clump, that famous aroma, has faded to a flat, damp cardboard sort of nothing. And the trusted names of the past don't behave the way they used to. Here's what pushed us to dig deeper. A peer-reviewed study from the University of Sheffield tested rice sold across British supermarkets and reported that a worrying share of it exceeded the stricter safety limit set specifically for infant and young child food. A limit designed to protect the most vulnerable eaters in the country from inorganic arsenic, which is classed as a Group 1 carcinogen. And here's the twist that catches so many careful shoppers out. The wellness option, the organic brown basmati you pay extra for precisely because you think it's the healthy choice, can actually carry noticeably more of that same substance than the plain white rice sitting next to it for half the price. We're not here to panic anyone, we're here to help you understand what's really in the bag, what's changed, and how to choose well. Because the honest truth sits somewhere between blind trust and blind fear, and that's exactly where a sensible shopper wants to stand. If you've noticed that your rice just doesn't cook, smell, or taste the way it once did, do us one small favor. Hit the like button and click that YouTube hype button right now. It costs you nothing, but it pushes this investigation in front of more British families, and it helps send a clear message to the giant food companies that shoppers are paying attention and expect better standards on our shelves. So here's the plan. We've gone through the major basmati brands currently filling the shelves of Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's and Morrison's. We'll count down 9 products we think you may want to think twice about, from clever marketing dressed up as heritage, to sourcing lotteries, to a genuine health question the industry would rather you didn't ask. Then we'll clear the air on a viral recall rumor that had people emptying their cupboards for no reason at all. And finally, we'll give you 4 brands that, in our view, are still genuinely worth your money, including one that solves a problem older shoppers have been quietly grumbling about for years. And let's get into it. Number 9. Tilda Pure Basmati. Let's begin with the name almost every British household knows. For decades, Tilda was the gold standard, the blue bag you reached for when you wanted rice that simply worked. The brand was built up in this country by the Thakrar family, who earned a reputation for careful purity testing and traditional aging. And for a long time, that reputation was thoroughly deserved. Then the ownership changed. In 2019, the Spanish multinational Ebro Foods acquired Tilda for a reported sum of around £270 million, folding a beloved British name into a vast international rice operation. Now, to be completely fair, the current bag is exactly what it says it is: 100% pure basmati rice with nothing sprayed on, nothing added, and no additives whatsoever. Anyone who's told you that Tilda secretly coats its grains in synthetic chemicals is simply wrong, and we're not going to repeat that. But here's what longtime cooks have genuinely noticed, and keep noticing: the rice doesn't seem to behave the way the old Tilda did. Plenty of people who've bought this brand faithfully for 30 or 40 years say the grains now clump and turn sticky where they once stayed proud and separate. That legendary sweet aroma, The one that used to fill the whole kitchen has faded for many to something much flatter. There's a widespread feeling that when a heritage brand gets swallowed into industrial-scale, high-volume production, something intangible gets lost along the way, even when the ingredient list stays technically identical. The frustrating part is that you're still paying a premium price for that heritage badge. The reputation is doing an enormous amount of the heavy lifting here. You're buying the memory of what Tilda used to mean, and for a lot of shoppers, the modern bag doesn't quite live up to it. It isn't dangerous and it isn't dishonest about what's inside, but it's a brand coasting on a legacy that older buyers remember far more fondly than what they're pouring into the pan today. And when the whole appeal of a product is trust built over generations, that quiet slip in consistency is exactly the sort of thing worth noticing before you spend. Number 8. Tilda Broken Basmati. Staying with the same brand, there's a product that causes a lot of confusion, and it's worth understanding exactly what it is before it ends up in your basket. Tilda's Broken Basmati, sometimes sold as Superior Basmati Brokens, is precisely that. Basmati grains that are fractured rather than staying full length. Now, we want to be straight with you here because there's a lot of nonsense online about this one. Broken Basmati is a completely legitimate product with a long and proud history in South Asian cooking. Broken grains are traditional and often preferred for certain dishes, from savory rice porridges to sweet puddings and kheer, where you actually want that softer, quicker cooking texture. There's nothing sinister about broken rice itself. The reason it lands on our list is simpler and more practical. Many shoppers pick it up assuming they're getting a bargain version of the premium long-grain basmati they know, and then feel let down when it cooks into something soft and clumpy rather than fluffy and separate. If you're making a fragrant pilau or a biryani where you want every grain standing on its own, this isn't the product for that job, and the packaging doesn't always make that distinction obvious to a casual buyer. It's also worth knowing that in this country, you'll mostly find it in large wholesale sacks through independent grocers rather than on the main supermarket shelves. So the honest verdict here isn't that it's a bad product. It's that it's a specialist one, easily bought by mistake, and worth choosing deliberately rather than by accident. Number 7. Any supermarket organic brown basmati. This is the one that surprises people the most, and it's the section where we need to be careful, precise and calm, because the science here is genuinely interesting, rather than something to lose sleep over. Picture the shelf. The organic brown basmati sits there in its wholesome packaging, promising clean soil, no synthetic pesticides, and the healthiest possible choice for your family. You'd reasonably expect it to be the safest bet in the aisle. The current ingredient list is honest enough. It's simply 100% organic brown basmati rice. But the story of how rice absorbs what's in the ground tells you something the front of the pack never will. Rice is grown in flooded paddy fields, and its roots are unusually good at drawing up inorganic arsenic, a naturally occurring substance in soil and groundwater that's classed as a Group 1 carcinogen. Here's the catch. Some soil scientists suggest that because organic farming avoids synthetic weed killers, fields are sometimes kept flooded for longer to suppress weeds naturally. And those waterlogged conditions can make that arsenic easier for the plant to take up. On top of that, brown rice keeps its outer bran layer, which is exactly where more of that arsenic tends to concentrate. White rice has that layer polished away. The University of Sheffield, whose researchers have studied this closely, reported that brown rice can carry noticeably more inorganic arsenic than polished white rice, and that a concerning share of the rice tested exceeded the tighter limit set specifically for infant and young child food, which sits at 0.1 milligrams per kilogram. That infant limit is stricter than the one for ordinary adult rice for a reason. Small bodies are far more sensitive. Now, in the interests of complete fairness, the UK Rice Association firmly maintains that rice sold in this country is monitored and meets strict legal limits. And we're not telling you that a bowl of brown rice is going to harm a healthy adult. It won't. But if you've been paying extra for organic brown basmati, specifically believing it's the gentlest, purest choice for a baby or a young child, that's the assumption genuinely worth rethinking. For the little ones especially, well-rinsed white basmati, or simply varying the grains you serve, is a sensible and inexpensive step. The health halo on this particular product is doing more work than the evidence supports. Number 6. Akash Gold Basmati. Some products sell you a feeling before they sell you any rice, and this is a fine example. Pick up a bag of Akash Gold and you're greeted with glowing images of Himalayan peaks, golden sunshine, and the promise that the grains have been perfectly aged in that mountain light. It's a lovely picture. The question is how much of it you can actually verify. The current bag, to be fair, contains 100% naturally aged basmati rice, and it's stocked widely in the likes of Tesco, Sainsbury's, and on Ocado. But when a brand leans this heavily on romantic imagery of pristine mountains and traditional harvesting, you'd expect that story to be backed by something solid, like clear single origin certification or verified aging times printed where you can check them. Here, that proof is thin on the ground. The evocative marketing does an awful lot of talking, while the hard, checkable detail stays remarkably quiet. That matters because aging is the single thing that separates good basmati from ordinary basmati. Properly aged grains lose moisture, firm up, and cook into long, separate, fragrant lengths. Rushed grains turn soft and sticky. When a pack promises the romance of slow mountain aging, but offers nothing you can actually confirm, you're being asked to take the prettiest possible version of events entirely on trust. Plenty of shoppers who've tried it describe cooking Akash Gold as a bit of a lottery, sometimes passable, sometimes a soft, clumpy disappointment, which is exactly what you'd expect when consistency isn't guaranteed. It isn't the worst rice on this list by any stretch, but you're paying for a mountain fantasy, and the picture on the front is doing far more than the label behind it can prove. Number 5. Trophy Basmati Rice. Trophy is one of those brands that looks the part on the shelf, with a name that practically shouts prize-winning quality. The bag is stamped with a seal of quality and packed by Indo-European Foods over in Felixstowe. But the label and the saucepan don't always tell the same story. The recurring complaint with Trophy is consistency, or rather the lack of it. It's reported to contain a high proportion of broken and unevenly sized grains, and if you've ever cooked it, you'll know what that does. Big grains and small fragments cook at completely different rates, so you end up with some grains still firm, while others have already collapsed into mush. You can rinse it, time it, and watch it like a hawk and still get an uneven pot, because the problem is in the bag, not in your cooking. For a product positioned and priced as a proper basmati, that's the real disappointment. Good basmati is meant to be forgiving and reliable. You should be able to trust it to turn out fluffy and separate without a running commentary. When a noticeable share of the grains are fragments, that basic reliability goes out the window, and you're left doing damage limitation on the hob. There's nothing wrong with the single ingredient inside, it's aged basmati rice and nothing else. But quality basmati is judged on the integrity and uniformity of the grain, and on that measure, this one keeps falling short of the confident image on the front. If consistency matters to you, and for good rice it really should, this is one where the trophy seems to be mostly on the packaging. Number 4. Tesco, Asda and Sainsbury's own brand basmati. Supermarket own brand basmati can look like a canny buy. It's usually cheaper than the big names, the ingredient list is clean, and the bag feels perfectly respectable. The problem isn't what's printed on any single pack. The problem is that the pack you buy this month may bear almost no relation to the one you bought last year. Own label basmati is typically contract packed, and those contracts get handed to whichever supplier offers the best price when a deal comes up for renewal. One year your supermarket's basmati might be packed by one company sourcing from one region, and the next it could be an entirely different supplier drawing from somewhere else altogether. The name on the bag stays the same. Almost everything behind it can change. What that means for you is a total absence of guaranteed aging or consistent origin. With a proper single-source brand, you build up a sense of how it cooks and roughly what to expect every time. With a rotating own label, you're effectively rolling the dice with every new batch. It might be decent, it might be forgettable, and you've no reliable way of knowing which until it's steaming in the pan. For everyday plain rice where you're not too fussed, that lottery might be perfectly acceptable, and we're not going to pretend otherwise. But if you actually want fragrant, separate, dependable basmati for a special meal, the sourcing lottery baked into own brand rice makes it a gamble. You're not buying a rice you know. You're buying whichever rice won a pricing contract, and this year's winner tells you nothing about next year's. Number 3. Salam Basmati rice. Here's a little shelf psychology worth understanding. When a product seems to be permanently on offer, it can feel like you're endlessly winning, always catching a bargain. But a price that's forever slashed is often telling you something the marketing won't. Salam is one of Surya Foods' brands, and it's a product you'll frequently spot sold at heavy discount. Now, a genuine one-off sale is a treat. A product that lives on the discount shelf week after week is a different matter. Often, it's being marked down repeatedly because shoppers keep reaching past it at full price, and the discount is what's needed to shift it at all. The recurring feedback on Salam is that it simply lacks the aroma and character you'd hope for from a basmati, along with a tendency towards higher starch and a softer, less separate result. That constant discount, then, isn't a stroke of luck for the shopper so much as a signal about how the product performs against expectations. If it delivered a beautiful, fragrant pot every time, it wouldn't need to lean so hard on being cheap. Again, the contents are honest, 100% basmati rice and nothing else. This isn't about anything hidden in the bag, it's about value, and about that little psychological nudge a big discount gives you. A markdown feels like a reason to buy, when sometimes it's quietly a reason to pause. Real basmati earns its place through aroma and texture, not through a sticker telling you how much you're supposedly saving. Number 2. Laila Basmati rice, the standard pack, with its familiar elephant motif, is a fixture in kitchens and cash and carries right across the country, particularly for families buying in bigger sacks. And to Laila's credit, the bag contains pure basmati rice with nothing added. But turn it over and read the origin line carefully because it's more revealing than it first appears. The standard pack is labelled, in effect, as a product of more than one country. That single phrase is doing a great deal of quiet work. It means the rice inside isn't tied to one region, one soil, or one growing tradition. Instead, it can be blended from different countries depending on what's available and, crucially, on what's cheapest when the buyers are placing their orders. For the company, that flexibility makes perfect commercial sense, letting them chase the best price across a whole season. For you, standing at the stove, it's the enemy of consistency. Basmati from different regions cooks differently, smells differently, and elongates differently. When the blend can shift from batch to batch, the bag you loved last month might behave like a stranger the next time you buy it. That's exactly why long-time buyers so often describe basmati like this as hit and miss. One sack cooks up beautifully, the next turns out mushy or oddly stained, and there's no way to predict which you'll get, because the recipe behind the label is a moving target chasing the market price. If you value knowing exactly what you're going to get every single time, a multi-country blend is working directly against you, however honest that little origin line technically is. Number 1. Asda Just Essentials Long Grain Rice. And so we arrive at number 1, and it's a reminder that the cheapest option in the aisle sometimes costs you in ways that never show up on the receipt. This is Asda's Rock Bottom Long Grain Rice, a single kilogram bag priced at just 52 pence, and it replaced the old Smart Price line back in 2022. Let's be clear and fair about what this is. It isn't basmati, and it doesn't claim to be. It's plain long-grain table rice, and at that price it does the basic job of filling a plate. The ingredient list is simply 100% long-grain rice. So why crown it number 1? Because of what that 52 pence price actually requires and what so many shoppers reach for it without ever considering. To hit a price that low, the grain is heavily polished, stripping away the outer bran and germ where much of the fiber and nutrients live. What you're left with is essentially refined starch. And refined starch, cooked soft, tends to carry a higher glycemic index, meaning it's converted to blood sugar more quickly than a firmer, less processed grain like a properly aged basmati or a parboiled variety. For anyone watching their blood sugar, and that's a great many people in this country, particularly among older shoppers, that's a genuinely relevant difference. We want to say this calmly and without any scaremongering, because this isn't about a single meal. It's about a staple that ends up on the plate several times a week, year after year, for the very households counting every penny most carefully. The people most likely to buy the cheapest rice are often the people who benefit most from a grain that releases its energy a little more gently. It isn't poison, and in a tight week, it'll feed a family. But if there's a small amount of room in the budget, swapping this refined starch for a firmer, less processed rice is one of those quiet, sensible upgrades that pays you back slowly over time. Sometimes the true cost of the cheapest bag on the shelf isn't printed on the front at all. Before we get to the brands we actually rate, let's clear the air on something that had people needlessly emptying their cupboards. You may have seen dramatic claims circulating online that Ben's original rice was recalled here in Britain over stones found in the packets. Let's set the record straight, because getting this right matters. That recall, issued in October 2025 over small stones in ready rice pouches, was strictly a United States affair, handled by the American company and published through the American Food Safety Authorities, affecting American shops. No such recall was ever issued here by the UK Food Standards Agency. British households were never under an official recall for that product. It's a perfect example of an American story being repackaged as a British scare, and it's exactly the sort of thing worth double-checking before you panic. That said, there is a genuine UK reason to know exactly what you're buying. In the summer of 2025, this country's National Food Crime Unit made several arrests connected to a scheme repackaging cheaper grains into premium basmati bags. That's a real, verified British concern, and it's the strongest argument going for sticking with trusted, traceable brands and buying from sources you know, rather than the suspiciously cheap sack from an unknown seller. Now, whatever rice ends up in your cupboard, there's a simple, practical way to reduce the inorganic arsenic in almost any of it, and it's the sort of kitchen wisdom your grandmother probably practiced without even knowing the science. First, rinse your rice thoroughly before cooking. Several changes of water until it runs clear. That alone shifts a surprising amount of surface residue. Then, rather than cooking it in a tight, measured amount of water that all gets absorbed, cook it in plenty of water, like you would pasta, and drain the excess away at the end. Researchers at the University of Sheffield tested cooking methods specifically for this and found that the right approach can remove a substantial share of the inorganic arsenic while keeping most of the goodness in the grain. Some cooks also swear by soaking the rice for a while beforehand and tipping that soaking water away. It costs you nothing but a little water and a couple of extra minutes, and it's especially worth doing for rice you'll be serving to young children, who are the most sensitive of all. It's a reminder that how you cook rice matters just as much as which bag you buy, and it's a small sensible habit that quietly puts you back in control at the stove. So what should you actually be reaching for? A few simple things separate the genuinely good basmati from the pretenders. Look for a brand that clearly states its rice is aged, ideally for 12 to 18 months, because that aging is what gives you those long, separate, fragrant grains. Look for a clear, single country of origin rather than a vague multi-country blend. And trust the brands that let the rice speak for itself, with straightforward labeling and a track record of consistency, rather than the ones hiding behind mountain scenery and grand promises. With that in mind, here are 4 we think genuinely earn their place in your cupboard. First, India Gate. Milled by KRBL, one of the largest and most respected rice millers in the world, India Gate is the sort of basmati you'll often find behind the scenes in good Indian restaurants. And there's a reason for that. The grain is sourced from the classic Indo-Gangetic growing regions and aged properly, which shows the moment it hits the water, you get real elongation, proper separation, and that genuine nutty aroma that so many modern bags have lost. It's stocked in the likes of Tesco and Ocado, so it isn't hard to track down. And there's a particularly clever option in the range for anyone watching their blood sugar, the Golden Cellar version, which is gently parboiled before milling. That process helps the grains stay firm and separate, and tends to give a lower glycemic index than soft white rice, making it a genuinely smart pick for diabetics or anyone who simply wants their rice to hold up better on the plate. If you want to remember what proper basmati used to taste like, this is a fine place to start. Second, Dawat. From LT Foods, this is another naturally aged, high-grade basmati that does the one thing cheap rice can't. It expands into long, elegant grains without breaking or collapsing into starch. The aroma is consistent, the texture is reliable, and it behaves itself in the pan whether you're making a plain side or a full biryani. You'll find it in Tesco and Morrison's, among others. It's the kind of dependable, no-drama basmati that quietly reminds you what you've been missing if you've spent years wrestling with the hit-and-miss budget blends. Nothing flashy on the packaging, just properly made rice that cooks the way basmati is supposed to. Third, Kohinoor Platinum. This one is aged for a full 18 months, and that patience is exactly what you can taste and see. That long aging draws moisture out of the grains so the starch settles, which is precisely why it cooks up so beautifully fluffy and separate, every grain standing on its own. It's a genuinely premium product that delivers on its premium billing, rather than just charging for it. You'll find it in Tesco, Asda and Sainsbury's in various sizes, so it's widely available. If you want a special occasion rice that turns out perfectly for a Sunday feast or a proper curry night, and you're willing to pay a little more for grains that actually justify it, Platinum is a reliably excellent choice that respects both your money and your meal. And fourth, White Pearl. This is the one we especially want to flag for anyone who's been quietly frustrated by the whole basmati market, because it solves a very real problem. So much of the genuinely good, aged basmati only comes in enormous 10 or 20 kilogram sacks, which is all well and good for a big family or a restaurant, but useless if you're shopping for 1 or 2 people and can't lift, store, or get through a bag that size before it goes stale. White Pearl from Map Trading is a community-trusted, properly aged Pakistani basmati that hasn't messed about with its formula, and crucially, it's widely sold in sensible 1 and 2 kilogram packs. You'll find it in Tesco, Morrison's and Asda, often in the World Foods aisle. It's proof that you don't have to buy in bulk to buy well, and for a single pensioner or a smaller household, that alone makes it worth seeking out. Now we'd love to hear from you. Go and check your own cupboard right now and tell us in the comments which basmati you've been buying and whether you've noticed that fading aroma so many people talk about. If you remember the old rice, the kind sold from open sacks in the corner shop, tell us what it was like and let us know if there's a brand you swear by that we didn't mention. And if these investigations are useful to you, do subscribe, because we've got plenty more of them coming. So the next time you're standing in that rice aisle, remember that the prettiest bag isn't always the best one, the cheapest isn't always the bargain it seems, and the most trusted name might be trading on memories more than merit. A little knowledge turns you from a target into a shopper who can't be fooled. If this has been useful, please hit that like button, tap the hype button to help push it in front of more British families, subscribe so you don't miss what's next, and drop a comment telling us which food or product we should investigate for you next. Until next time, stay sharp, trust your own good sense, and protect your plate.